Okay, so we're going to do an exercise called rib and shell to emphasize the ribs and some more tools with the ribs and how the shells work. And so we're going to start a new file. I'm going to start a new file, a new part, and this part is inches. There is a PDF that I have on the student data folder for this part. It is also on Blackboard. So I'm just putting that over on the screen to the right. So once we start a new part, then I can go up to my options and make sure of my document properties are ANSI and my units are inches. The first part of this is to create an extruded feature and just going to set this up so we can talk about the ribs. And I'm going to do that in the top plane. I'm going to create a center rectangle and generate this with some dimensions that make it 10 by 5. And then we can extrude it. I'm going to extrude it with a taper, but we're going to flip it. We're going to extrude it 2 inches going down, but we're going to add a draft on it and draft that outward at 5 degrees. So it's a blind extrusion, 5 by 10 rectangle, 2 inches tall, but you're going to draft it. So this would be a plastic injection molded piece. And when I say OK, then that should generate the base or the base feature. The next one is to cut across the top. So I'm going to do a extrude cut, and we're going to do that in the front plane because that's in the middle, and then look at the front. This cut, we are going to create the shape. This 45-degree angle is on the side. It is 5 wide. It has a 45 degrees on each end, and it's what was it 0.5 in height. And so to center this, you could create excuse me, create a center line and create that center line from the midpoint of this bottom line to the midpoint of that top line, make that line vertical, and connect that line to the origin and center it. Another method would be to right-click on the top line, choose the midpoint, hold the control key down, select the origin, and make them coincident. You would do the same thing with this bottom one. So again, right-click on it, select midpoint, select the origin, and make them, no, that would make them vertical, not coincident. So delete that and make them vertical so they line up. So you're lining up the midpoint of the line with the origin. Same thing as using the center line. That is in the middle, the front plane, and so when I exit that sketch, I can extrude it 2 different directions. I can extrude it through all one way and through all the other way, actually, and then get that to cut. Well, whoops, it looks like we have 2 different contours. So let's find out what the heck's going on there. Go back into that sketch. Looks like I got an extra line. So there's an extra little line there. Delete that. Now it should work. So now I should be able to go back up to extrude cut, select on that sketch, extrude through all one way, direction 2 through all the other way, and cut that top piece out. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is cut the inner out, and if I do a sketch, on this top face. I can offset, and the distance is 1/4 inch, and I can reverse that direction, and we'll come in with it and just keep going all the way around, and it should clean up the corners automatically for us. So just keep picking those all the way around, and then it's 1/4 inch in. I'm going to say OK there. That connects this sketch to that outside edge. So if the outside edge or the original boss extrusion was to change, then so would this distance would remain 0.25. It stays connected with that dimension for that offset. When I get out of the sketch, then I can go to features and cut that, and I can cut it offset from a surface and offset from the bottom, again at that 0.25. So we're staying 0.25 away from everything, and we also want to add another draft to it. So all the sides of this part will have a draft. Say OK, and it should cut that out. Now we can talk about the ribs. So I want to put some ribs in here, and I'm going to do that with a sketch, and I'm going to sketch on this lower face, and within that sketch, looking at a top view, I can create my my ribs, or I'm going to create sketches that will become the rib, and doing the circle here, that circle should be 3.25, and then I can create some other lines. Now I'm just going to put these lines out here anywhere, or actually one of them I'm going to put out there anywhere, the other one I can attach. Make sure you're not attaching it to the midpoint though, and then dimension those. The distance all the way across is 6.25, and the distance from one to the other would be half of that, or 3.125. But I did this this rib line here is short. It doesn't actually touch on the corners. This one here I connected it as a coincident constraint as it connects on those edges. That's really all you need to be able to create a grid or a ribs. If I get out of that sketch and then go up to features and rib and select that sketch, it will. We want it mid plane or both sides. We want to set the thickness, which is 1/4 inch, and you can also give it the 5-degree taper. Okay, when these ribs are created, it's just going to extrude out from those edges to the nearest faces. So even this one that's not touching that face will still fill in. So when I hit the green check mark, it filled in all the way across and all the way down because it's just coming from that line and extending out to the nearest face. And so that feature there of the rib and it extending out from that line to the nearest face was what you needed to see there. We can then go back and add some fillets, but I wanted, oh shucks, I wanted to go back and fillet the outside corners, but because I offset things, if I go fillet that outside corner, it's not going to do the inside one. If I was to just fillet the outside corner and set that to 0.5, then it's not going to do the inside corner. If I was to come back and fillet the inside corner at 0.5, it's still not going to be the same thickness across here because of the taper, because of the draft that we put on it. I want you to be able to modify and adjust and go back to an original base feature, modify it, and have everything update. So if I go back to this first boss extrusion in that sketch and I modify that sketch so that there's a fillet, a 0.5 fillet in that first sketch. Okay, and we do all the corners. When I get out of that, then that does the fillet. When I get out of that, it will do the extrusion, but it's going to throw up an error because the offset we did for that internal cut was taken from the geometry that I now just changed. If you continue through that error, it says unable to offset one or more sketch lines. If you continue through that error, then it shows you where the error is. And right here you have your yellow sign, caution sign. If you hit the plus next to the cut, the error is actually in the sketch. So if I select on the sketch and edit the sketch, these are no longer offset from that geometry because I changed that outside geometry. So the extrusion will stay. If you just come back in here and delete the offset and then redo that offset in the sketch, and go around and pick those edges all the way around again. And so basically what I'm doing is redoing the sketch, and the cut is still there. I'm just redoing the sketch that the cut was built from. So when I hit the green check mark, it'll fix my sketch with no errors, and then when I get out of the sketch, it'll do the cut. But because I changed the cut, now we have a problem with the ribs. Again, you see the caution symbol. If you go down to the sketch and edit the sketch, you'll see that you have a dangling relationship, because that point used to be connected to an edge that's no longer there. I changed the edge. We have to remove that relationship, and if you want to, you can redo that relationship so that we can make this a fully constrained sketch, and we can connect these other edges out there so we can make this a fully constrained sketch. So I'm wanting you to be able to go back into the browser and fix mistakes. If you were to change an original and change that geometry, what happens down the road from that or down the river from that, and be able to go back through and modify and update. And then lastly, you have some fillets to put in. So we'll do a fillet here and here on these 8 little corners at 0.5. Oops, don't want that one, so just right click, delete, and try it one more time. Okay, that's first. And then I want to put a fillet on everything else, but I don't want to sit there and pick one edge at a time. So I'm going to change my view to a hidden line view, go look at it in the front, and when I put my fillet on, this time I'm going to make a window around all the edges that I wish to fillet. Instead of picking one edge at a time, I can window around those edges and have all the edges selected at once. And the size of those should be 0.125. Got to be a lot smaller so that they can fit on the ribs. And once you set the correct size, you should be able to do a full preview. If you don't see it as a full preview, it's not going to work. And then hit the green check mark and it'll make all those fillets. So I just switched it to the hidden line so that you could see all the edges at once, and you could see them in a front view, and you could put a window around them to select them. Then I put it back to the shaded view. And then the last step would be to shell the bottom out. If I go in here and shell and take the bottom face off, the shell must be smaller than the smallest fillet. The fillet was 0.125. Your shell has to be smaller than the 0.125. So we're going to shell this out with a thickness of 0.08, and it should do fine on those fillets. What I'm talking about is if I go back and put this in hidden line and go back and look at a front view, this inner one is the line of the shell. If that piece of geometry, if this shell was thicker, then that piece of geometry would disappear. If the shell was thicker and that piece of geometry disappears, then the shell would fail. So the shell has to be, the shell thickness here has to be smaller than that radius. And so there's our part, and we'll come back in a second and after everybody's had a chance to model it, and then we'll do the drawing.